It was a stormy night in a small, forgotten town in the United States. The rain fell in sheets, hammering the streets, turning the roads into rivers. Streetlights flickered with every gust of wind, casting long, dancing shadows across empty sidewalks. Ethan had been driving home from a late shift at the diner. His windshield wipers worked overtime, but the rain was relentless, blurring everything outside. The old radio in his car crackled, playing static between news reports about the approaching storm. As he turned onto a narrow, wooded road on the outskirts of town, Ethan noticed a figure standing by the edge of the forest. A man, or something else. His headlights caught a glimpse of wet, matted hair and a face hidden in the shadows. The figure didn't move, yet Ethan felt its gaze pierce through him. He shook his head and pressed the gas pedal, trying to shake the unease. The road ahead twisted like a snake through the trees. Rain pelted the roof of his car, and thunder rattled the windows. Ethan's phone vibrated, a text from his sister. "Be careful. That storm, it's worse than they said." He shivered, unsure why a simple message unsettled him so much. As he drove deeper into the forested path, the rain grew heavier. His headlights reflected off the water, creating shimmering patterns that danced across the trees. But then something moved, a shadow darting across the road, too fast to be human. Ethan slammed on the brakes. His heart pounded as he peered into the rain. Nothing was there, just the endless grey of storm clouds and wet asphalt. Suddenly, the engine sputtered. The car coughed and died. Ethan slammed the steering wheel, adrenaline surging. He tried the ignition again. Nothing. Panic settled over him like the rain-soaked night itself. He stepped out, the cold rain soaking through his jacket. The forest loomed on either side, its trees twisting in the storm, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching for him. And then he heard it, a low, wet shuffling behind him. He spun around, flashlight in hand from his glove box. Nothing. The shadows seemed to move of their own accord. Rain ran down his face, mingling with sweat, and Ethan realized he was not alone. A whisper carried through the storm, almost unintelligible, yet chilling. It sounded like someone calling his name. Ethan. Ethan. He ran back to the car, fumbling with the door handle. The key wouldn't turn. The whisper grew louder, closer, coming from every direction at once. His breath came in ragged gasps. And then he saw it, a figure emerging from the trees. Wet, dark, features obscured by the rain, but its eyes glowed faintly in the night. Ethan stumbled back, tripping over roots and mud, landing hard on the ground. The figure was closer now, its shape shifting like water itself. He scrambled to his feet, heart hammering in his chest, and ran toward the dim lights of the town. But as he ran, the shadows followed. Every puddle reflected something unnatural, something moving just behind him. Trees seemed to bend toward him, branches snapping under invisible weight. The rain, once a comforting shield, now felt like a curtain hiding hundreds of eyes watching him. Ethan reached the edge of the town. The street was empty, flooded in rainwater, and the houses were dark and silent. He ran past a diner, where the neon sign flickered weakly. He could see the silhouette of a person inside, but when he looked again, it was gone. The doors were locked, the lights off. The storm drowned out his voice as he called for help. And then he saw the first sign of them. Shadows in the rain, not entirely human, creeping along the edges of buildings, between street lamps. Each one reflected in puddles like twisted echoes. He realized with horror that no one else in town would see them. He was alone. Completely alone. He ran toward his own house, but the street seemed to stretch endlessly. The rain poured harder, hammering down like nails on a coffin. And with each flash of lightning, he saw more. Faces in the windows of empty homes, dripping with rain, staring at him with hollow eyes. Ethan finally reached his front door, yanking it open. Inside, the house was dark and silent. But as he stepped in, the whispers followed, echoing through the empty rooms. He fumbled for a flashlight, turning it on to reveal a shadow in the corner. A figure, wet and hunched, with eyes that gleamed like wet stones in the beam of light. He backed away, heart racing. The shadow moved closer, slipping across the floor like water. Ethan tried to scream, but his voice was swallowed by the storm outside. And then he heard the first sound he would never forget, the drip of water, slow and deliberate, from the ceiling. Except the ceiling had no leak. The shadow paused, and in the flickering light, Ethan saw hands. Long, thin, pale, dripping with rainwater as if they had just emerged from the storm itself. The whisper returned, now clearer, more insistent. "Ethan, you can't hide. The rain knows." He bolted upstairs, tripping over the wet carpet, and slammed the door to his bedroom. Rain pounded against the roof, lightning illuminating the room in stark white flashes. He pressed his back against the wall, gasping, trying to rationalize what he was seeing. Shadows didn't exist. This had to be a dream. But then the window rattled. Something wet pressed against it. A face? Another pair of glowing eyes? He couldn't tell, and every instinct told him not to look. Hours passed. The storm raged outside. Shadows crept along the walls, flickering with the lightning. Ethan couldn't sleep, couldn't move, couldn't think beyond the wet, whispering terror surrounding him. Each time he tried to calm himself, the rain seemed to thicken, pressing closer, suffocating, whispering his name. By dawn, the storm began to fade. Ethan dared a glance out the window. The street was empty, soaked and silent. But in every puddle, in every shadow, he could see faint shapes, moving just beyond his vision. And he knew they were still out there. The morning after the storm, Ethan sat in his bedroom, drenched in sweat despite the rain having stopped. The whispers had vanished, but the memory of the glowing eyes haunted him. Every shadow in the corners of the room seemed to twitch, as if alive. He knew he couldn't stay here. He had to find answers. Ethan remembered an old story his grandfather had told him about this part of the town. Centuries ago, a massive storm had flooded the forests, and townsfolk had disappeared without a trace. They said the rain carried spirits that didn't belong, shadows that mimicked human form but were neither alive nor dead. Everyone dismissed it as superstition, until tonight. Gathering courage, he stepped outside. The streets were wet and silent, the puddles reflecting a grey sky. The storm had left everything glistening, almost too still. As he walked, Ethan noticed footprints in the mud. Not his own, much larger, and oddly wet, like they were made by someone who had just emerged from a storm. He followed them, heart pounding, to the edge of the forest. The trees swayed gently now, but a chill ran down his spine. The shadows he saw last night weren't gone. They were waiting, blending perfectly with the morning mist. A low whisper carried through the forest. "Ethan, come." Ethan's instincts screamed to run, but he felt compelled. As he stepped closer, the rain from last night pooled in hollows of the earth, shimmering unnaturally. And then he saw them, dozens of wet, hunched shapes moving between the trees. Their eyes glowed faintly, like wet coals in the dim light. Frozen with fear, Ethan watched as they drifted silently, surrounding him. Then, one stepped forward, a taller figure, its form twisting unnaturally, water dripping from its limbs as if it were born from the storm itself. Its glowing eyes locked onto Ethan, and the whispering grew louder, now a chorus of voices echoing from all directions. "You cannot escape the rain. It knows your fear." Ethan backed away, slipping in the mud, and fell hard. Pain shot through his leg, but he forced himself to his feet. He realized something. These weren't mindless shadows. They were aware, and they were testing him. Desperate, Ethan remembered an old talisman his grandfather had kept in a drawer, a small silver pendant said to protect against restless spirits. He fumbled for it, gripping it tightly as the tallest shadow advanced. Lightning split the sky, revealing the face of the figure, wet, hollow, and inhuman, yet eerily familiar, like someone he knew, twisted by the storm. The shadow lunged. Ethan threw the pendant at it, and a flash of light exploded, scattering the others. The figure shrieked, a sound like water breaking over rocks, and vanished into the mist. For the first time, the whispers faltered. Ethan didn't stop. He ran through the forest, rainwater soaking his clothes again, following a faint path toward the old town cemetery. He remembered his grandfather saying that storms and shadows are drawn to places where the boundary between worlds is thin. If he could reach the cemetery and perform the protection ritual, he might survive. At the cemetery, tombstones gleamed in the wet dawn, their inscriptions blurred by the rain. Ethan set the pendant in the center of the oldest tomb, closed his eyes, and whispered the words his grandfather had taught him. A cold wind blew, swirling around him, and the shadows returned, dozens of them, but now they recoiled from the pendant, their forms wavering and unstable. A final flash of lightning illuminated the tallest shadow. Ethan opened his eyes to see it screaming silently, dissolving into nothingness as the first rays of sun broke through the clouds. The other shadows followed, vanishing like mist in the morning light. Ethan collapsed, exhausted but alive. The storm had passed, and the rain had stopped. For now, the shadows were gone, but he knew deep down that they were only dormant, waiting for the next storm, the next night, to rise again. As he walked back home, wet, trembling, and shivering, he glanced at the puddles on the street. For a brief moment, he thought he saw a pair of glowing eyes staring back at him, just under the surface. He blinked. Nothing, but the memory of the rain, the whispers, and the shadows would stay with him forever. The town slowly returned to its quiet, post-storm state. But Ethan would never forget. The rain could hide more than water. It could hide the eyes of those who wait in the shadows, and the moment you feel safe, is the moment they are closest.